There are few epidemiologists or observers of COVID anywhere in the world who have compiled information more carefully than Dr. Eric Feigl-Ding. From the very onset of this disease, he has tracked developments around the world. He has been in touch with some of the finest scientists and researchers who are tracking every development. And he joins us now. Dr. Feigl-Ding, thank you very much for being with us once again. Tell us why you believe this strain of COVID is potentially far more dangerous than what we've seen with Delta.
Well, first of all, Delta is, as we know, is very dangerous. But the level of mutations that makes this orders of magnitude, leaps and bounds different. The number of mutations are over 30 mutations in the spike protein alone versus Delta that only had 13. And these are very, very distinct. And somehow this evolved all these different mutations, which previously have been shown in other variants to be either more immune evasive or more transmissible and maybe more severe. And all these things together gives us a lot of pause and worry. And also, it's not just in the biology, but we've seen a surge in South Africa, a surge so fast that it actually displaced Delta in South Africa. And there's very few places or almost no place in the world where any variant has displaced Delta as a dominant variant. But in Gauteng province, which covers Joburg and Pretoria, it surged so much and is now 75% of the sequenced strains. And hospitalizations in the last 2 weeks have tripled in just 2 weeks alone. And positivity went from 1% to 30%, 30%. So all that is really worrisome together with all the other biology evidence. And that's why the world is really bracing itself for it.
I just want to quote from one of the graphics that you've actually have tweeted out. It's on the Gauteng province where there's a box, a caption which says, because I think this illustrates your point well, on the 26th of November, 1.94 people were being infected by a typical person with COVID-19. That is, 100 primary infections led to 194 secondary infections. This corresponds to a quadrupling of cases in just over 6 days. A quadrupling of cases in just over 6 days. That's the bottom line, right? That the R factor, the R naught factor for this particular variant is much higher than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, we believe it's much higher. But it's hard to know the exact R naught because R naught assumes we have no mitigations, no vaccines whatsoever.
Right.
And obviously no place in the world has that. We all have some degree of mitigation, vaccine, and past infection. But it is very high. And the worry is that if it's true it displaced Delta so quickly to 75% within just a matter of weeks, it could be 5 times more transmissible than the Wuhan. Delta was about twice as transmissible, but if it's 5 times more and the data holds up, because it's still very preliminary, it could be much lower, that would be really, really scary. But I'm trying to cross my fingers and hopefully the early data may be the statistical oversampling or noise. But if it's true, it could be much more transmissible than Delta. And that gives me a lot of worry.
Dr. Feigl-Ding, what about fatalities and serious illness arising from an infection? Is it, from what we know thus far, what are the trends towards that? Greater transmissibility, I get the point. What about viral load? What are we seeing?
So we don't know the exact viral load yet, but so far, for example, in Hong Kong, the 2 cases in Hong Kong that arose, one 60-year-old, one 36-year-old, both double Pfizer vaccinated, the viral load was pretty high. It was 18 to 19 CT. And then in the Belgian case, in the unvaccinated woman, the first Belgian case, her CT was 13, which is 13 is very, very high in terms of it's 5 to the second power. It's actually 2 to the fifth power in terms of higher viral load than 18. So I think it's very worrisome, but we don't have exact evidence. There are some people who say it's mild, but that's just anecdotal. I go by hospitalizations. When I see hospitalizations surge 3x in just 2 weeks, that doesn't give me any reassurance that this is going to be a mild virus. And usually, by the way, hospitalizations lag cases by about 2-3 weeks before hospitalizations rise. But this time, the hospitalizations rose pretty quickly within just less than 1 week after cases spiked. So that means that they're much tighter going up together than before. So all these things, we have to wait and see. We're going to have a lot more data in about 1 or 2 weeks. But altogether, there's a lot of cause for concern. And right now, as we know, being precautious early on will pay long-term dividends. But we oftentimes fail to learn that lesson, even so much further into the pandemic.
So Dr. Feigl-Ding, what about vaccinations among those who've been hospitalized in the last couple of days in South Africa? Do we have any trends on that? Are these people...
We don't have good data on that yet. We don't have good data. We know that, most vaccinated people will have it pretty mild. And I just want to point out the 2 Hong Kong cases who were vaccinated, they were more than 6 months. They were about 6 months since their second shot. Right. So we really do need boosters. And boosters, I want to point out, it doesn't just raise your immunity back to the fresh 2-dose level. It puts it at triple the level of antibodies than your fresh 2-dose. So I think boosters are really, really critical. And even if there's some waning against the original vaccine, I think when you triple the antibody levels with a booster, you'll get a lot more protection. And I don't think it will be that evasive against the vaccine. I think the vaccine might be a little bit weaker against it, but when you have a booster that triples the antibody levels, I think it will likely give you protection. But obviously, boosters rollout is still very slow and not available worldwide.
A final question to you. Is it fair to assume, in your opinion, that this strain of COVID has actually spread much further around the world than just the handful of countries where it's been identified so far?
Oh yeah, I think it's spread much further. We're actually seeing the S gene dropout signal, which is instead of full sequencing, there's a shortcut test, PCR test, you could do it for it. And we're seeing that pop up in many parts of the world that's already suspected. So we'll have confirmations very soon. We saw 2 cases in Canada yesterday. Yep. We also saw cases in Australia confirmed. So basically almost every continent is covered. And I'm pretty sure we'll get a lot more cases confirmed in more parts of the world within the coming days, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I think in many ways, the travel bans are already too late. I don't think we should have travel bans. What we need right now is international arrival entry testing and preferably quarantine, either hotel quarantine or home quarantine, and then another repeat testing to exit quarantine. That is the safest way and way more effective than any travel ban.
And of course, wearing the mask is the safest step in the interim period.
Masks, ventilation, ventilation masks don't care about the variants. No. The ventilation masks, they are agnostic to the variants because they dissipate or block the virus. And this is where we should still stick to these tried and true methods. Yeah. And we just haven't learned that, unfortunately. No, we haven't. This is a pandemic of a virus as well as failed leadership in many parts of the world. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Feigl-Ding, thanks for sort of spelling it out for us, analyzing some of the trends that you're seeing. Good speaking to you. Thank you very much indeed.